call the meeting to order at 7:06, and we'll start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we approve the agenda, I'd like to see if we can get a motion to move the FY audit results, MERSD audit results, from its current spot up to, well, we don't have Chris here today, so just right after community comments, if I could get a motion.
Motion to move
The MERSD
audit up
the
to,
MERSD audit update.
yeah,
Second?
second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, so now can I get an approval of the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion to approve the open session minutes for March 14th.
I just put out, I did send out a minor correction this afternoon.
I see.
Okay. Just making sure.
Make a motion to approve the March 14th open session minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, so, community comments. Does anybody from the public wish to speak or have any questions? No? Okay, hearing none, we'll move right along. We don't have Chris today, so we'll go right up to the FY MERSD audit results with Tim Craven.
Okay, well, you should have in your packet the audit report from FY15, which ended last June 30th. And as he does every year, Tim is with us to talk about those results and kind of give a high-level summary of his findings. So I thank Tim for coming out this evening. Tim was a little bit under the weather last time, and I think he's still
Not feeling
battling
great.
something. So thank you for being here, Tim.
Excuse me for not shaking everyone's hand.
No, we appreciate it.
My name is Tim Craven. I'm a CPA in Norwood, Massachusetts. I'm a sole practitioner. I've been the auditor of the district for a number of years. As is usually the case, you have a clean audit opinion. With respect to your financial statements, internal control, and everything else that goes with an audit. I don't know if everybody has a copy of the report with them. Numbers are what the numbers are. I'd be happy to speak with anybody individually at any time. You can get my number from either Jay or the superintendent. Last year was probably a pretty difficult year, I think, overall. You ended up dipping into your reserve, your E&D for about $600,000. I've done a schedule of the E&Ds, or not necessarily E&Ds, but the reserve fund balance since 2002, I believe. And it gives you an idea of what the trend is. I know that next year you're planning to use $300,000. Hopefully you won't need to use any more than that. You have about $1 million, which is a healthy reserve for a district of this size. I wouldn't want to see it go any lower than that, if at all possible. But I know you're going to have some challenges next year with healthcare. I think Jay mentioned that it's looking like it's going to be 20%, something in that range, which is going to be a serious impediment to balancing the budget. I don't think you'll be able to rely next year on a great deal of savings in snow and ice, considering how dreadful this winter has been on us. So, I think you're going to have a task ahead of you to find all the means necessary to fund the system the way you want it to run. Aside from that, I don't, since nobody has copies with them, it'd be hard for me to go and point out numbers in return of snow, tax that in the audit report. But as I say, I'm always, welcoming of comments and discussions. If you have any questions, then please feel free to call me at any time. Aside from that, I don't think I have anything else to add at this point.
Nothing out of the ordinary to report.
No, like I say, you use 600,000 of your E&D, but, that's why it's there. I don't know, you're only scheduled to use 300. We budgeted 700, but you only use 6, so that's a good start. But this year you budgeted 300 for 16, and I don't know what the plans are so far. 17. I think that, like I said, I think you're in pretty good shape by actually with $1 million in E&D, so a lot of good shape for one.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Boy, that was easy. Should we spend more on it? Never want to interfere with the camera. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll skip back up to superintendent comments.
Okay, thank you. First off, I put in your packet some samples, and I'd like to announce that I've contracted with a firm known as K-12 Insight, which is a national firm, to do some surveying as we close out this school year. And it will be an online survey that's administered to our parents, to staff and students at the secondary level, okay? And I put in your packet an example of the survey that, template sample survey that will be administered to those parties. And the topics are related to school climate, to family involvement, to leadership, and so on. I've had some experience in the past with this firm. As I put in my background notes, both Mansfield and Foxborough have used this online survey. And again, it's part of the cycle of continuous improvement. I see this as one piece of both quantitative and qualitative feedback about school quality that can help inform not only our district improvement plan, but our individual school improvement plans. So tentatively, we have planned a window of approximately 3 weeks, April 27th to May 13th, to open up this online survey. And it's relatively brief, as you can see, probably no more than about 10 minutes to actually take the survey. And as soon as we have the results and they're tabulated and formulated and processed both at the school level, probably next fall we'll put together some type of presentation on the findings and present that to the school committee. Okay.
So this is going out to the whole district?
Whole district, yeah.
Whole district.
Yeah.
Is there still, like with, I had a chance to kind of read through the survey, and are we still capable of kind of
Absolutely,
editing
yeah.
and fine-tuning?
Tweaking. Yeah, I realized what I shared with you was just kind of the template,
Okay.
kind of standard template. If you have something specific, I've asked all 4 principals to kind of share and tweak when selling. So they're definitely customizable.
Okay, great.
Okay. Second piece, and Tim kind of stole my thunder on this, but I think it's hardly a military secret. I know it was discussed at the Upton Selectmen's meeting last week. Right now, we're in a very, very challenging situation with regard to the quote that we're getting from Harvard Pilgrim Health with regard to our health insurance costs for next fiscal year. Their latest quote has them increasing our rate by 19.59% for FY17. And they're basing this largely upon our district's loss ratio for the last 12 months, which is roughly at, I believe, 106, 107%. So our position is clearly that this is unreasonable, really excessive, pushing upwards of 20%. So right now, we're in the process of using our agent, Ken Lombardi from NFP, to continue the negotiation process. I think we're looking at various solutions. We're looking at obtaining quotes from other carriers. But this is very much a challenge. As you know from the last time we met at the budget hearing, we've budgeted a 10% increase. If we were to stay at this 19.59, it basically represents about a $300,000 deficit above from what was the certified budget. So just kind of a status update. When we meet again 2 weeks from tonight, I'll give you an update. Keep in mind they use a rolling 12-month loss ratio range. So we should have the January of 2016 claims actually this week, April 15th. So we'll have a little bit more information and a little more negotiations going on, but I just put that out there so that you're cognizant. And then last but not least, you should have a copy in your packet of the year-to-date expenditure report for this current year budget. Jay, is there any line that you'd like to highlight or any area of concern?
Well, last week I would have highlighted how we saved quite a bit on snow and ice, but then it snowed, we didn't meet, so I'm not as optimistic anymore on that, but actually we've done fairly well in that area. But all in all, right now, we're still trending in a good trend, we're in a good place, so I'm optimistic that we're going to be finishing reasonably strong for this year.
Okay, any other questions? That's it.
Okay, so our next topic is MERSD's school nutrition program and an update with respect to that.
Okay, yeah, we're happy to have Diane Mucci here, who is our Director of Nutrition Services, and Jay. I know we typically once a year have talked about how the program is doing. To her credit, I think Diane has provided extraordinary leadership in turning a program that was solidly in the red and now for a period of at least 2 to 3 years has been solidly in the black. So a few updates as far as a few status pieces and then talking about moving forward. So, Jack.
All right, thanks. First, I do want to point out, the last time I did this, I put chocolate brownies and fried chicken on here, so I chose a healthier choice this year because I know the rules say you can't have fried chicken and brownies anymore, French fries. So what we want to talk about is where we are with the food service program, the kind of things that we're doing, participation, meaning how many meals are we actually serving a day, the financial piece. We did just undergo an audit from DESE, and we have some of the results from that, and then there's a couple of policy decisions that the school committee has to weigh in on that I'm going to be looking for some input. You don't have to necessarily make decisions tonight, but it's got to be on your radar so that we make decisions coming up soon. So let's talk about participation first. So we're looking at FY15. You can see we're serving an average of about 1,065 meals a day. I think that's pretty good. I went back a little bit further than this, and I think the number of meals has increased quite a bit over the 3 or 4 years that Diane has been here. I believe Diane started at the end of FY11. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So basically the beginning of FY12. One of the things that's really increased is the breakfast program, and I don't know, which buildings do we do breakfast at? Is it just Clough, or do we do it?
We do it at Fiscal, the high school.
Okay, so we're doing it all around. So that's helped quite a bit, and it's helped a lot on the financial piece as well. The lunches are going fairly well as far as I know. I do have sort of an insider at Clough School, as you all know, that works in the cafeteria. He tells me the kids are very happy with the food, and they're very happy with everything there. And he would tell me if they weren't, so I'm pretty optimistic about that. If you go to FY16, you can see, go back there, we've actually increased the average by about 30 lunches a day. So again, that's a good sign. And we're serving more kids. That means hopefully kids are happy with the meals that are being served and the quality of the food. So this is just where we're at so far, but that's why I gave you a daily average so you can see where that increase is. On the financial side, you can see that prior to Diane coming here and finishing up, I think Diane started maybe in April.
I did, yeah.
Something like that. So she walked into FY12. We were running deficits, and historically back into the 90s, we had almost a $100,000 deficit at one point in the cafeteria account. It's only kind of dwindled down. But you can see there's a fairly dramatic turnaround from 12 to 13, and then to 14, and then to 15. So I would attribute a lot of that to Diane. I think she's done a fantastic job of not only getting food at a better price, getting good quality food, increasing participation, and increasing the reimbursements. The reimbursements are a big part of the revenue into the program. Where you see a level number, go back again for a second, Joe, you're ahead of me. We dropped a little bit from 14 to 15. One of the things that we've started doing when we haven't done this for a long time is when there's maintenance issues in the cafeteria, the appliances have issues, we're having the cafeteria account now pay for those maintenance things instead of the building maintenance accounts. And that, so we're kind of leveling it out, but again, the lunch program is not supposed to be we're not a restaurant, we're not a profit center, we're supposed to just have revenue to support the program. So cash balance, I think, is actually really good. I think the next slide is the reimbursement numbers. So this kind of explains how the program works. There's a website there that you're welcome to go to that's fairly complex. Tells you basically who qualifies for free and reduced lunches, the types of foods that you have to serve, and do you want to add anything to the types of foods at all, or do you want to just leave it at that?
It's all healthy and very good.
Right. Again, no brownies, no fried chicken, no French fries. It's very disappointing, let me tell you. I remember my school lunches, that's basically the best days. The way this works, though, so we get reimbursed on a free lunch for $2.93 per lunch. Now keep in mind, we only charge $2.75 for a lunch, so in many ways it's beneficial for the district to have people on free and reduced as far as revenue to the program. Obviously, you don't want people there that shouldn't be there, but we would encourage people, if they think they qualify, to fill out the application and find out. The reduced lunches, we get $2.53, and I believe the participants pay 40 cents for a lunch.
Yeah.
So again, that comes up to the $2.93. We get 28 cents for every paid lunch. So anybody that pays full price, we still do get a reimbursement for that. And then the snack prices are below there as well. So the next slide is going to show you basically the reimbursements that we've gotten, and it goes back to FY12. Now you can see that again, we've gone from 122 to 159, trending on where we're at for FY16 and 60% in. That translates out to about 165,000, somewhere in that range. So again, we're moving in the right direction. We're bringing in money, and we're getting reimbursements for it through the federal government, and that's the goal, is to take advantage of these programs as they exist. Now, we had this audit, and the Department of Ed, I believe, every 3 years comes in. This year they picked one kitchen. They happened to pick Clough School, which they went in and they checked a lot of things out. And ideally and honestly, I think that when they do an audit, they feel like they have to find something wrong. So they pick some things that I don't exactly think are the most catastrophic things in the world, but this is all they really cited us on. One of the issues was that the screen on the cash register had a little code, but nobody really would know what that meant, that said somebody was on free and reduced, and that shouldn't be on the display. So we've taken it off. It was a fairly easy thing to do. I don't know how many free and reduced applications they actually looked at. Diane, do you know how many they looked at to find the one that didn't have the right number on it?
285.
285. So out of 285, one, it wasn't us that put a wrong number. Somebody filled it out, and either we didn't read it correctly or it wasn't legible.
One digit shy.
We were one digit shy, okay. So one out of 200 and how many again? 285. So again, I think we're kind of grasping at things here. They want more signage in the classrooms related to the breakfast program. And that's something we didn't have. We're going to get it in there. They gave us some guidance on the kind of things that need to be up in the classrooms, and we're going to take care of that. And then the last thing they cited us on was how we post cafe revenue in our books. So what we've done in the past is when we have revenue that's posted to a revolving account, which the cafeteria account is, we just post, January deposits in a lump sum. They want it separated into 4 categories. The federal and state reimbursements separate, the NutriKids Heartland payments is a third, and cash payments is 4. Very easy correction, but again, I think we're kind of grasping at straws here to find something that's wrong in a program that's actually running really, really well. And that's the only thing that they found that was worthy of citing. So that's kind of where we stand with the food program now. Joe. So we do have 2 issues that we need to address, and we need some school committee input on it. And I actually have something for you that I'll hand out in a second. We do have some negative balances in the NutriKids system. What that means is that parents are not keeping their accounts up to date for their children. Right now, that negative balance is about $4,400, and one of the things that we weren't cited on, but we need to do is when you finish June 30th of the fiscal year, we have to, out of operational funds, zero out all those negative balances. So we try to collect that money as best we can, but the challenge is when you have kids that come to lunch, it's typically not the child's fault that the parents haven't kept the account up to date. Sometimes it's an oversight. Some of the accounts might be, $4, $5, but some of them are fairly high. So we need to answer some questions here, and I actually have for you a draft of a policy that we kind of copied off of another school district. And I'll hand this out for you to review at some point. But the questions that come up are, what do we do when a child comes up to charge their lunch on the school lunch program and there's a negative balance on their account? Personally, I don't think you actually say, well, sorry, no lunch for you today. It's not like, no soup for you today. But we do have to do something because those negative balances tend to build up over time. There's a lot of options. You can, I suppose you probably can refuse, but I'm not sure that's the right course myself. You can serve them an alternative lunch, keeping in mind that the alternative lunch does have a cost to the district as well. You could just let them continue to charge and do your best to collect the money and just pay it off at the end of the year. But it's something that we really need some guidance from the school committee on as to how we want to approach this. So this policy here that we kind of copied and adapted a little bit has a variety of options. This is what one school district is doing. I believe they have different approaches for elementary students as opposed to high school students, although I probably would recommend that we have a fairly similar policy K through 12. So that's one thing that we need some input from the school committee on is what would you like us to do as a lunch program to try to collect this money when we can't get it. What's the highest negative balance we have? It's about $300 or so?
Yeah, just under 300.
Yeah, so we have some that are fairly high, I believe. But I said, I'd say most of them are in the probably $10 to $60 range.
Yeah.
But there's enough of them. So I put that to you. I don't know if you want to ask questions or discuss it now or just take it under advisement, but it's something that we do need you to provide us some guidance on.
Yeah, I think it requires some thought,
Okay.
personally.
It's a very touchy subject.
It's interesting because you can take multiple approaches. I have a son who is taking advantage of the whole double lunch, unbeknownst to me.
Right.
So I was a little annoyed when he went well below his balance. So I can see it from both sides, but I would never want to deny a child a meal
And
by any stretch.
What
So-
were you considering, you said alternative lunch? What does
Um,
that,
Generally, it would be something like peanut butter jelly or
Okay.
this year it says,
Yeah,
this says cheese sandwich or sun butter and jelly. I don't really know what sun butter is.
it's like an alternative to peanut butter.
Okay.
Non-peanut product.
Again, it's not fried chicken, so we'll suffice it to
It's
say.
healthy.
But you serve some kind of alternative lunch that doesn't cost as much to the district as, say, the regular lunches. But there's still costs, and the parents would still be getting charged for that lunch if you did it through like this policy here that's written up. I think we're open to suggestions, to be perfectly honest with you.
So what is the current, forgive me for asking this because I feel like I should know this, but what's the current notification when you go into the red?
Diane, I'm going to ask you that
We
question.
do bi-weekly emails, they go through an email blast, it's sort of a generic letter to parents.
And it comes through My School Bucks?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, and then when we don't get a reply, I will do a snail mailing out, and then if we still get nothing, it lands on Jay's
Right.
desk.
And I know from my position, I have twice, I think, sent out emails to maybe 25 or 30 families and handwritten letters, not, snail mail letters saying your balance is in arrears, you need to get it up to date.
Okay.
Sometimes we have, sometimes they're just ignored. We have not like sent collections agencies after people or anything like that. So we haven't taken the draconian approach yet. We've tried to like do it as gently as we can. I think this year we've had somebody making some more phone calls and being a little bit more aggressive within the cafeteria program. And I think that's helped a lot, but there are still some balances out there that we need to address. And again, in all honesty, I think we don't have it in next year's budget for FY17, but beyond that, we're gonna create a line item and probably fund it at about $5,000 a year to cover these balances because we have to pay it off.
Right.
I didn't realize we had to pay it out of operational funds. I mean, my first question when they told us that was, well, can't we just use the money in the cafeteria account to pay it off? And they said, oh, no, that's not allowed. Can't do it that way.
I wonder why, that's interesting. It seems like it would be logical,
Right, but
but not.
so I would ask that you maybe take it to the policy subcommittee. I sent the policy subcommittee an email about something else that I'd like to discuss, so I'd be happy to do it at the same time and work with you to see if we can come up with an approach that works. And we'll do the best we can. I mean,
Yeah, there's gotta be a balance somewhere
right.
between letting them ring up charges and not being able to collect for it and not denying a kid lunch.
Right.
It's gonna be a nice balance.
And maybe it is age appropriate that, in that maybe you have a different approach for a second grader than you might have for a junior high school. I mean, I know, again, when my kids were a junior in high school, they didn't have lunch, they didn't eat, I didn't really care. But that's me.
Father of the year
Yeah.
amended.
Have a snack when you get home, All right, so the next thing is the price of school lunches. Now, the last time the school lunch price was raised was in 2010, I believe. So it's been about 6 years. The federal government has a formula that they use to determine what they think you should be charging based on the reimbursement rate, and I've kind of given you the mathematical approach here. So they basically take their reimbursement rate minus your price. They divide the two, come up with a percentage there, and multiply your price by that percentage, and come up with a calculation that the school, we should be charging $278 per lunch as opposed to $275. So based on that, you're allowed to round to the nearest number up or down. So we could leave it the same for another year, but probably if we don't do something this year, we will have to do something next year. We could also just go up 5 cents, and that would probably buy us a couple more years, but we'll be back probably FY19 or FY20 asking for another increase there. We could go up 10 cents, which is where my recommendation is, which will get us another 5 or 6 years, 4 to 5 years, which is kind of what we did last time, and give us a little more time and get us like within the guidelines that they're looking for. Obviously, you can go up as high as you want, but I think, again, personally, I think going over, going to $3, I think, would probably hurt your participation and you'd end up losing money rather than making money. But again, this is a decision that the school committee has to make, is where do we want to go with school lunch prices? Do you want to leave it alone for another year? Do you want to go up just 5 cents and buy a couple of years and address it then? Or do you want to go up 10 cents or 15 cents, or where do you want to go? When do we wouldn't do anything probably till next school year anyway, so it's not like you again have to make a decision tonight, but it has to be something that's on your radar before you adjourn for the summer.
Okay.
Then we come to a conclusion on this one as well, so, you know, we can put it off for a couple of meetings and bring it back. But that's something else I'd open up for discussion.
I think that's helpful, having that little chart to know kind of how far out it gets us.
And I'm estimating, to be perfectly honest, you know, I say 4 to 5 years, could be 5 to 6 years for 285. It could be that we last, you know, 2 years at 275 before it really crosses that threshold. Once that formula hits 280, we need to get to 280. And do they actually cite us if we're not at the right amount?
Yeah, but they give us a schedule that we have to follow to bring the lunch prices up to where they need to be.
So in the next audit, when they can't find anything, it'll be that we don't charge enough for our lunch. And I think the last thing that we just want to throw sort of out to you is there is a state bill, and I actually had the link and I thought I put it in here, but I guess I did. There is a bill right now in front of the legislature that will eliminate the use of styrofoam trays. So the question is, when that happens, we'll have to do something different. Now, there's probably some kind of paper recyclable tray that we could use that would satisfy that. But we have dishwashers in 3 of the 4 buildings. The 2 at Clough Memorial, I don't believe have ever been used. They were put in when the building was built, but I don't think they've ever been run. The one at Nipmuc may have been used, but needs repair in order to become operational. And I think the other 2 do as well. Do we want to go in that direction toward having a reusable tray? You know, a plastic tray that you run through the dishwasher. I don't know what kind of impact that would have on labor as far as staffing in the cafeteria. We did get some cost estimates to repair the dishwashers. It wasn't cheap. I don't want to throw a number out there because I don't remember what it was. But it was, suffice it to say, it was, you know, in the 5,000 range, I would say. You know, do we want to use silverware instead of plastic utensils? I think we have a bunch, don't we, from the old days?
We have some, definitely not enough for the
Okay. You know, I've heard 2 trains of thought on that. You know, you give kids metal forks and knives, they're liable to do things they shouldn't do with metal forks and knives. But it's another something that I think we need to think about and look at. You know, in the meantime, we will try to get some actual estimates on what it would cost to get the dishwashers up to speed. We do not have one at Fiscal School. I'm not even sure if we have space in the cafeteria to put one in. I don't think they're cheap to buy. Just one more thing to throw off to you guys, you know.
Are you going to be able to accurately estimate how much manpower it would take to physically wash all these trays?
Well, you have to have them scraped off, and I think you could probably have an expectation that the students would like dump the refuse in the garbage can and put
Yeah.
the tray up on a rack.
Well, just trying to be realistic of what this is going to look like, that's all.
Yeah, well,
I mean, Jay, you could be a job creator.
I could, really. I'm creating jobs after we build the wall. I can give you feedback. Again, I get some feedback from my son who's working at the club cafeteria, but you have to understand that he is experienced as a line cook in a kitchen, so he thinks it's no big deal. Yeah, we could do it, not a big problem. It'd take an extra 3 minutes, run them right through, it'd be simple. That's his perspective, it may not be reality. So I don't know, I mean, we would have to look at that. I mean, Diane, what do you think about, you know, would that impact hours? Would we need more people, or would
You
it?
might need to look at your staffing, yeah. Realistically, I'm looking just at the high school because we have that nice big window. And we all remember doing it when we were students. You whack the tray and you just line them up on racks, you spray them down and run them through. You have to let them air dry, you can't wipe them, so you have to have enough trays available, you know, for each lunch that comes through. You know, but I would have to actually do a little number crunching to see what it would be to get that job accomplished. On top of that, you have repairs of machines and then sanitizers and things that go along with it. I personally think it's a great idea, and it's something we should put, you know, on our radar.
I mean, the only challenge that I can see is if there's food on the trays that ends up going down the drain. You have to remember that at Clough and Fiscal, you can't have garbage disposals because we have septic systems. So you can't like grind up stuff and put it down there legally. Memorial and Nipmuc were on a town sewer system, so you certainly could have garbage disposal. We may even have them here, I don't know.
We have two that both need to be repaired or replaced.
Good to know. So again, it's just something else that, we start to think about, again, I guess, it does have an environmental impact to keep throwing foam trays out. If they were some kind of cardboard, they probably would be much more difficult to work with, but you probably could then recycle them through paper recycling.
But can you recycle them after they have food on them?
They say no, but I don't know that they actually go through your paper.
I feel like it's something that we kind of have to look at all of the different options, because from a personal standpoint, I don't love these styrofoam trays. I don't think it sends the right message to the kids, and I know that anything else is a more expensive option, but it's kind of a philosophical thing.
Right.
And I've spoken to a lot of parents who kind of feel the same way, like, I can't believe we're using styrofoam trays, but I do understand the reasons why. So it'd be kind of nice to weigh what the other options are, and certainly they're gonna be more expensive and probably more time consuming in some cases, but is it worth it for the greater philosophical,
Right.
like, be green, what we're teaching our kids?
Right, and I would tell you that part of that would be a financial piece. Obviously, I can't advise you to go and spend, $50,000 investing in a program just because we want to be better for the environment, just because we don't have the $50,000, or whatever it could potentially cost. There may be some grants out there to buy, because there's an initial capital expenditure to buy the trays.
Right.
We'd have to buy them for all 4 buildings. As Diane said, you'd probably need at least 2 or 3 sets worth of each meal thing, because you've got to recycle them through and clean them
Right.
and have them dry. You don't want to give a kid a wet tray with food on it. I mean, that's kind of gross. So there would be that aspect. And then the equipment itself, there is maintenance on the equipment. But there's maintenance on all the equipment, so it's not like they're going to break down 5 times a year. Now, obviously, we might have to buy a dishwasher, so there's some financial implications. I mean, we can do some more research on that and see what we can come up with as far as like what a real cost factor is. Obviously, if this bill ever gets passed, I don't know, for all I know, they'll exempt schools, because they like to do that, pass laws for, profitable businesses and exempt the nonprofits, so to speak. But environmentally, it may be the right direction to go as we move forward.
How many lunch cycles does each school have?
Diane?
3 and 4, elementaries have 4. Oh, you have 3 and you have 4. We have 3 at the high school.
Clough, I think, has 3. Is that right?
And what's the drying time on something like that? Because you would
Water's
have
really
to,
hot. I mean, it would dry in between lunches.
so you could do
But you
one cycle wash, and then you could use the first cycle again.
Yeah.
Can we get one of those like dryer things like they have in car washes that just blows and
No, you
dries?
cannot.
You cannot?
No, it would pick up dust, it could conceivably pick up pollutants, so.
You
they
can
have
only
to
have
air
like 15 minutes
Okay.
between to.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering if there was
Yeah.
time.
So I think it definitely warrants more discussion and having some different options kind of put in front,
Okay.
just to kind of figure out which direction we do go in here.
Right. And again, this isn't something that has to be decided even this year, but it is something that I think needs to be, again, on the radar as we move forward over the next year or two. I mean, top of your list needs to be the school lunch prices. Second is how we approach the negative balances, especially for the start of school next year, so that we have a plan in place that really applies district-wide for everybody. And then, this I would tell you is the last piece. Just kind of summarize it all, though, in general, I think the food service program is doing really well. I think it's being run extremely well. I think, from what I can tell, I think the kids are happy with the food they're being served. So, all that I think is a real positive. Diane, I think you're doing a great job. I think that you need to be commended on that. Since you've come here, I think the program has gone in a positive direction very much. And anybody have any questions?
Thank you very much. I actually do have a question, and I'm sorry, Jack.
Uh-oh.
Yep.
No, it actually relates to waste, and I know that there are so many different regulations saying that you have to put things on a tray because it has to meet criteria, but I just want to try to get a sense of how much waste is happening on a daily basis in our cafeterias, and whether or not there's anything that we could do about it, any programs that we could filter the unused food through.
I mean, what we have at the high school is we have a giving basket, which prevents a lot of the waste. So if the kids don't want the carrot packs, they put it in the giving basket, and the giving basket is out a lot of days, and kids that, you know, bring home a lunch or want a snack or something, they can just go and grab it for free in Apple or whatever.
Okay.
So that's there. That said, the waste has been reduced considerably because the kids are sort of on board with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But this isn't new.
How about, do we do that same thing at the
So-
elementary level as well?
Can I speak on that? So, two things. One, our waste has been a lot less since we've given up ice cream, because kids used to throw the stuff away very quickly to get the ice cream.
Okay.
So we see the kids eating more. Our salad bar.
Makes sense.
No, it really did. It was
It
like,
makes
hurry up,
sense.
because I want my ice cream.
Yeah, get
So
on
we
top
do
of
see
that.
them eating a lot more. Since we've had our community garden in, the waste is a lot less, because the kids, we have so many kids going to the salad bar, knowing it comes from our garden, has really helped a lot. We tried the basket for like all of 3 days, and I stopped it. And I did. And the reason I did is because we have a lot of allergies at our younger grades, and we don't have enough supervision. So what was
Sure.
happening is, as soon as we did it the first day, the second day, the kids got their lunch, and before they even sat down, they were throwing stuff in that they didn't want. And they weren't even trying it, so they were just throwing it, then hoping to go back to get stuff. And now you have kids that are like touching everything in their hands, and they're going in and they're picking stuff up. So to me, and you know, many of the teachers that came to me very quickly said they felt it was very unhealthy. And there are kids who are allergic to different things that aren't wrapped, and it just, for us at the elementary level, they don't have that consciousness of, or memory of what they can and can't eat. And there were people that were, parents specifically want them to bring lunch, and these kids were going in the baskets to get the stuff. And I don't want to go against what parents, if they choose for them to bring their lunch and they don't want to buy, it's not my place to say, here's a free-for-all. So we did try it, but it was very minimal time because it caused more problems.
I could see how it would be a nightmare,
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah,
For the young kids.
But it's a great concept,
It
like the
is,
whole
but
sharing,
it
like, I
just-
think that's great, but I don't think it would work at an elementary level.
No.
I could see how it
But the
would.
other thing that I've found that's cut down waste is having the recess first.
yeah.
So the students are going out, they're having recess, so they come in, they're hungrier, they're settling down, they're ready to eat, as opposed to, you know, saying that they're done so they can be the first ones to line up to decide if they're going to the field or the court or the playground.
And our water intake, because we always have the water
Yeah.
available,
Yeah.
there's so much more water.
They're drinking a lot of
consumption
water 'cause they're
than that,
thirsty.
and which is nice to see. So,
You know, the community garden is an interesting thing, though. I know that there's some talk in Bend of creating a community garden across the street on that property that was gonna be the library. It would be nice if that actually happens, where maybe we could be buying some of our produce from local, you know, from that type of a source, which would support them as well, but, you know, from what I understand, the garden over there is producing stuff, and they've got the salad bar going. It's actually kind of a pretty cool thing. I think you're pretty familiar with the garden.
Intimately.
So it'd be nice if we could expand that maybe in a memorial and, you know, even in a disco at some point. You could take that little courtyard in the middle there, trying to do a vegetable.
We tried, it doesn't get.
Doesn't grow, yeah. Okay.
So even if we could you take that same concept, that sharing concept, and instead of sharing among ourselves, like maybe somehow, I don't know, whether the senior center or other food banks, local food banks, like after the meal is over, if people have things, they're not giving to each other, but that they would be giving to the community, and still keep fostering that so that, you know, things don't get tossed in the trash. I have a very strong feeling that a lot of the food that I sent in maybe doesn't get eaten, but I just,
you may be right.
I'm just saying.
Well, if you were sending in fried chicken and french fries, that wouldn't be happening.
I think that would
Fenway
be,
Franks today were a huge hit.
yeah,
That was
for
awesome.
opening day, that's awesome. But just a thought, you know, like maybe we could still foster that spirit of giving, but just not among, because
Right.
believe me, Jan, I
Yeah,
totally
it
get
was-
that. I could see, just medically,
Yeah.
from a peanut
Yeah, I'm not willing
standpoint
to
or
take that
whatever,
chance
I
myself.
think that's too risky.
Yeah.
So anyways, just a thought. All right,
Thanks.
thank you, Jay, thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
This will give you perspective, what I just put up there, how long it takes that styrofoam tray to biodegrade. Just anywhere between 500 years to forever.
Yeah, it's troubling, actually. And that's why it's kind of like a bigger philosophical discussion. I just just feel like we should be doing something different. Something. I don't know exactly what that is, but maybe if we have some options in front of us with some cost analysis, it would be helpful. So, that's okay, so moving right along to subcommittee updates. So we'll start with policy. Is that you, Lee? Pam?
The policy ECAF, security cameras in the schools is being presented for first read. Some of the language highlights in the policy are that obviously the goal is to maintain a safe and secure environment for students, staff, and visitors. One of the things that need to be done to notify the students and staff through the staff, employee, and student handbooks that they
exist
that
and
they
they're
exist
being
and
used.
they're up and they're being used, and that there's appropriate signage for them, so that people are aware that they're there and where they are. And then the superintendent is going to ensure that there are proper procedures in place regarding the viewing, disclosure, retention, disposal of the recordings. Also, law enforcement and emergency officials can be granted access to the video recordings after giving prior notice. So those are just some of the highlights in that policy that we will present again for second passing. Does anybody have any discussion on that?
So these are security cameras that have been in use for many years,
7 years, I believe.
7 years, and now we're needing to write a policy on it. and-
It's strongly recommended by MASC. Seeing that, I think the overwhelming majority of districts in the Commonwealth have been using security cameras, and particularly since Sandy Hook, unfortunately, the amount has proliferated. So, hence the need for policy.
Mhm, makes sense.
Any discussion on that?
So do we want to talk about
And then regarding the Narcan, we're discussing whether we needed a policy for Narcan. The numerous districts in the state have, the school districts are supplying Narcan in those offices, but there's only a handful. I only know of Braintree that has a policy related to Narcan. So Joe sought some legal counsel on that, and he was notified that we don't really need policy for Narcan in the health offices, but we do need to update the emergency response plans to indicate where it's stocked and who the qualified folks are who can administer it.
So we're just modifying policy. I mean, modifying the.
We need to, and I will make sure it's done in short order. At present, we would need to change the emergency medical response plans for Nipmuc and for Fiscal Hill to indicate who is authorized to administer, specifically our nurses at both of those schools. I did put in the background notes, Mike Gilbert did say that MASC is looking at various permutations of policy, but they're still in the process of going through the review.
That it? Any questions? Okay, so, update on our task force for school committee outreach. On March 15th, we had another meeting to kind of elicit public response on what our outreach would look like. Dorothy and Pam were with me, and we had a few community members represented, very few, but still a few. We had 3. And we had some good discussion kind of about what that outreach would look like. And just kind of in a nutshell, the reasons why we're doing this is to utilize ways to keep the public engaged and informed on school committee issues if you can't make the bi-weekly meetings or the every other week meetings, to be proactive and invite regular involvement from the public, to detect both positive and negative themes with respect to the district, to be approachable in multiple settings, and to be more familiar. And we were doing this basically to determine how people would like to be engaged with the school committee. So we had a lot of good discussion, and I think that it's never a negative thing to communicate with the public and to be more visible and to provide opportunities. So I think the takeaway from this is that we will certainly do something. And it will probably take the form of like a coffee hour done maybe 4 times a year. But offering a daytime session as well as a nighttime session, kind of like what Anthony does with the workshops for technology, which is kind of nice. So we can talk about that as a school committee because it doesn't always have to be the same people. It can be different faces, you know, a couple people representing in the morning, 2 different faces in the evening, and that'll just kind of get us more out to the public. And we kind of determined that it might have kind of like a trifold format. First of all, the school committee kind of bringing to the table some pertinent information to share. Might be some information about Common Core, it could be school lunches, it could be a number of different things, just to kind of reiterate exactly what we're talking about in our meetings. And then get some general feedback if people want to share information that we're willing to listen in that setting, and then offer an opportunity for question and answer. So that's kind of the feedback that we got from the participants and just kind of brought together ourselves. Would you guys agree with me? That's a pretty good synopsis. Do you have anything else to add, or? No?
Touch on any highlights?
Well, I'm not going to, only because people did come wanting to talk about things, but that wasn't the purpose of this meeting. That would be the purpose of the meeting moving forward, certainly. And actually, some of them, I think, were touched upon this evening. So I was trying to steer away as much as possible from it being actually a coffee hour where people felt like they could bring their feedback. It was more just to define what will it look like, not necessarily give us your feedback now. However, we did get some feedback, which certainly we can share. But it was more just defining what it would look like. So if you guys want to talk about it, and let me know if that's something you're open to, if you feel like that's comfortable for other people, and Phil can weigh in at the next school committee meeting. But I don't know how you feel.
Overall, it was a
Yeah,
positive,
just like,
it was a positive experience.
Oh, it was definitely
It was limited
positive.
in who came.
and it was all parents. It wasn't there was no non-parents represented. So there was obviously a skew in that respect. But again, this is just my own personal feeling, like I always feel like more communication is better than less communication. And more opportunities to engage is better than feeling intimidated sitting at a school committee meeting and not being willing to speak up. So how do you feel, Lee? Do you feel like that's a good,
Yeah.
would you be willing to engage in that way? Like coffee hours and things like that?
Yeah, if I were available, then,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay. Just let me throw that there. So that's kind of the synopsis of what it looked like. All right, moving right along. Do we have any old business? Okay, how about new business?
Okay, we have, Maureen is here tonight to talk about the work that's been done since last October in looking at a new math program for grades K through 5. So Maureen?
All right. Thanks for having me. It's been hard for me to wait in the last few weeks because we had finished up our deliberations and our committee meetings right before the original meetings that we had and the snow day and everything. So we've been eager to talk about this. So thanks for having me. So when we start off, why do we need to change and look into having a new math resource, grades K through 5? And ultimately, the main reason is because our math standards, going back to 2011, that's when they were revised to the new standards, but we've been using a great resource, but a resource that we've been using that was built prior to those new standards. And so we've known in the last couple of years that we needed to start investigating what would be a newly aligned program that would be aligned to our new standards. So in our selection process, I'm going to give you like some highlights of what we went through, but we started with preparation of forming a committee, consulting various resources, and I'll talk about that. We came up with a review criteria for all of our materials. We surveyed the staff, and we reviewed the math standards and the math practices. Then we moved on to narrowing down to a few different resources, and then we jumped to evaluating and selecting. So I'm going to go through and give you a couple highlights of this. So the first thing, this definitely wasn't a Maureen project at all. This was across every grade level undertaking, and I can't thank enough the members of the committee that are listed up there, but we had representatives from all three schools, Clough Memorial and Misco, all grade levels, all the administrators who are here as well. And the meetings took place Monday mornings, 8 o'clock, weekly. We had lots of presentations. We reviewed multiple programs, and I'll talk about that in a second. But they devoted a lot of time, starting all the way back in October and going all the way through March. So they did just an outstanding job. So one thing we did is we surveyed the staff needs. So we wanted to find out, what they felt about math instruction, what does it look like. So I pulled out some of the key quotes that they had that were interesting. What kind of math resources do they find best support learning? And then we talked about what would you want the math resource committee to consider. And so what I'm happy to share with the Go Math program, I find a lot of alignment between what the staff was asking for and what we're able to deliver with our recommended program. So you can go to the next page. So I know one question that came up a lot, it will continue to come up, is, so what are all the other districts doing? And so this is just a sampling, that it is a mixed bag. So we didn't really know until we kind of put the survey out to a number of different districts to find out where are you at in this process and where are you going with it. So this is local districts where they're at. So the majority of districts have jumped onto a different program, Envisions, and there's a reason for it. It's the first one that came out that was aligned. So when people went through this process 2 years ago, right after the switch to the new standards, a lot just jumped into that program. When we looked at, and I thought, this might be the program everyone wants to go with because so many people around us had, but once they looked at the materials, they felt that it wasn't the right fit for us and how it was organized. So as you look around, you had some that had been using everyday math for a long time and they continued with everyday math. You had some that were going to Go Math as well. And so what we found, Investigations was the program that we're currently using, and there weren't a number of districts in our area that were using that, but they're still using it and piloting the next program in Boston. And then they're using it in Natick and Wellesley. Recently, a number of districts have jumped onto a program called Eureka, which is a great program. We didn't think it was a great fit for us, but a lot of people have been jumping on with that. So my point is, I kept trying to emphasize with the committee, there isn't a wrong decision. We're going to go through this evaluation process, and we're going to find the right one for us based off of what we're looking for. So if you go to the next slide. So one area we looked at in deciding what we're even going to be reviewing, we looked at what everyone else was using, but we also looked at some of the research that was out there. So this was a report by EDWI that came out probably, I don't know if it was, I think it was last year when it came out. And what they did is they reviewed a number of math programs. And as you can see, so this is one area they reviewed it for, it's called focus and coherence. I'll talk about that on another slide. But you can see the ones that we ended up looking at were Eureka Math, Go Math, Investigations, My Math, and then Everyday Math and Vision Math wasn't in their study. Anywhere in the green is according to their study and how they structured it, it was aligned. If it's yellow, it's partially aligned, and if it was red, according to their standard, it wasn't aligned at all, or not to the degree that they were looking for. And so we ended up not knowing from the beginning that our recommendation would be Go Math, but it's nice to go back and see that this was one of the more aligned programs according to this one study. So if you go to the next slide, this is the most important slide for me, I think. This is what drove our evaluation process. So we had an extensive rubric, a pretty long one, and I tried to simplify it as much as I could into one slide. But you'll see that there are 3 categories. So you have alignment, then the quality of materials, and then you have equity. And so in designing this, this came off of the principles of mathematics and principles to actions from the National, I'm going to say it wrong, Center for Teaching Mathematics. We used some of that research to build it. We used 3 rubrics that are out there from Equip or Achieve. So we combined the elements of all these rubrics and created one that incorporated the common themes and also what our teachers were looking for. So in using that, our first goal, it had to be aligned. That's why we're doing this in the first place. We want to make sure that our program is aligned to the new standards. And so our areas are focus, coherence, and rigor. Those are the key areas. So is it aligned to the standards? Do we have progressions across the grades where we know that there's a flow of what they're going to be building upon in the math content along the grades? And also the rigor piece, you see those 3 areas there. It has conceptual understandings, fluencies, and application. And this is the core of what I really liked about the Go Math program, is that it had a balance between the 3. Some programs, like Envisions, a little bit more heavy on the fluency and procedural skills by us looking at it. Other programs, like what we've been using the last few years with Investigations, great on conceptual, it's great on the concepts. What this is Go Math has an alignment between the 3, and that really stood out to us once we went through. For quality teacher materials, if you could just go back 1 second, I won't go over all of them, but this kind of went back to the survey of making sure that it's user-friendly, and this is where teacher input really came into play. They tried some of the materials out, we had presentations come in, but to make sure that it's of high quality and that it's user-friendly. I can go to the next slide. So when we, after we went through the 6 programs and reviewed them, this is how it played out in alignment to the rubric that we used. So Go Math, right after all those rubrics were completed by each of the grade levels, had the highest alignment. So you can see Envision came in after that, and then Eureka, but clearly Go Math was standing out. So then once we started to use some of the materials, then some of the teachers really liked, beyond the alignment piece, they really liked the ease of use. And it had some familiar aspects compared to our Wonders program as well, with some of the digital content, and also with some of the equity issues that were in that previous rubric of extending learning and also helping students who might need some interventions. So you can go to the next page. So here is a great big list, and I know you got this presentation in advance, so I don't have to go over every aspect of it. But if there's a couple areas that really stood out for some teachers, they really loved the explicit vocabulary that they had. A lot of teachers referenced that. They liked that there were opportunities for students to explore, so there was a concern in shifting what they really like about investigations. There's a lot of opportunity to explore and ask questions and do an investigation. There are elements of that in this program, and that was really important to carry that over. And there's also explicit connections to math practice standards, where teachers, it's clearly listed in the teacher materials. Here are the standards, here are the math practice standards, and this is how we're going to be applying it. So you don't have to be searching for it, it's right there for you. So that was really helpful. So if we go to the next page. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the highlighted features. What we liked, so when we talk about that focus, coherence, and rigor, at the top with the focus, you can see, so this is like a screenshot of a text for teacher materials. It identifies a critical area in math, the domain, and the standard. So right at the beginning of the units and beginning of lessons, you're clearly going to see here's alignment to the standard, which is really helpful. Not all other programs have that. What I love is the coherence aspect, which shows progressions through the grades. So if I am a fourth grade teacher, in grade 4 students will be able to, and it goes through the standards and what they should be able to do, but it also reminds me what they're going to do next year related to this standard and what they've done the previous year. And that's really helpful when we do pre-assessment. Students come in and maybe they didn't quite meet a benchmark. That's really helpful for us to know what area was missing from a previous year. And then you have clearly, it shows you the areas where we have that balance of the 3 between the conceptual, procedural, and the applications. And it's right there in the textbook for the teachers. So if you go to the next one. With differentiation, this was really important. And after we got the Wonders Reading Program, they do such a good job in that program with offering additional resources for intervention that this was a must-have for our teachers when they were looking at new resources. And so you start with a pre-assessment, show what you know at the beginning of a unit, and then it leads right into the various tiered responses. And it also has for our advanced learners as well, where you can dive deeper into some concepts. So it had it all. It had ELL supports, which most textbook companies are starting to get in there, but not all of them have. Next one. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it kind of shows the cycle of the lesson. And I really like how they identify, it's like the 5 E's. So you have engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And so some highlights in there where we wanted to make sure that we had that inquiry base where we're exploring, before we're taught in a mini lesson and taught those concepts, but then once we're taught it, then we can go and we can explain it, and then we can apply it, and that we have a variety. One of the rubric elements was a variety of assessments, and making sure that we had alignment to our next generation types of assessments, our Park-like or MCAS 2.0, and this has that in there. We also were looking for a math program that had performance tasks. That was really important, that we can have students doing performance tasks at times as well, and there are lots of options for that in the program. I would say the one thing that really stood out to me of all of the digital resources, and there are so many that it's hard for me to even keep track until I haven't really used them all yet, but the best one is this personal math trainer. And so what's different about this and some of the other resources, this is an adaptive assessment. And so when students, let's say they miss some answers or they don't get something right, then it will go and reteach, and we'll track that, and it'll adapt to how they're progressing in the assessment and the practice. And so then if they're achieving, it will bring them harder questions. So it's adaptive in that way, and all of the digital resources provide reports for the teachers, so they can get instant feedback on where their students are. Question teachers have, do we have smart boards? Do we have interactive whiteboard lessons that are built to it? Just because they have that right now with investigations, that will continue. They have that with this program. And just like in most programs, they have additional videos for teachers for PD to support them, and that's something that can be accessible. There are videos for parents and guardians, so that's helpful because sometimes we know we need a little bit of help with our math at home. At least I know I do my 4th grade math at home. You can go to the next one. They have 2 types of student editions, one that is interactive and one that's not. So there's an e-student edition that is basically the textbook but in digital form, and then they have an interactive student edition where it's great. You can use it on the board and it'll talk to them, it'll read the questions to them, but it also has games that are embedded in it that students can practice, follow up. And then if you go to the next page, in the corner, you have these math on the spot videos that can explain. So if they were practicing, something was assigned and they wanted to do something at home, these on the spot videos will help them and work through it with them. It works on the web, it's web-based, but it's also can work on any mobile devices like iPads, for example. And what I thought was a great feature, they have something where it can be offline, and so it doesn't, so if you don't have internet connection, you can still have access to some of the resources that are offline through an app that they have. Let's go back for a second. Something else that everyone was looking for, you know, what kind of manipulatives, that was one thing that came out in the surveys. We want a lot of hands-on activities. It comes with that. And something that was unique, I thought, to this program, they had these grab-and-go centers, and that had linkages to literature in those centers. So it could be something you work in a small group. If you're differentiating within your classroom, you could use it in a lot of different ways. And they also had these whiteboards, but it was interesting how they had different math models on the whiteboard. So a lot of teachers use kind of the blank whiteboards for doing, you know, math in the class, but this is structured to align with how the units are designed. So now we can go into the last. So next steps in the process. We are in the process of just securing the final quote of how much that would cost for all of the materials that we need. And once, you know, that's confirmed and we're able to move forward after, you know, presenting tonight, I can release online resources for our teachers so they can start looking at materials right away. We're looking to schedule PD for the spring, potentially on that May 13th PD day, to get them up and running and looking at some of the materials. And some of the teacher materials can get in their hands before they leave school. And then we would be looking to purchase the student materials and everything after the, you know, the beginning of the fiscal year. And I think that's it. So, any questions?
You mentioned about the reports that it generates and how it adjusts to the difficulty of the questions to the student, where the students are. Do they take their assessments online, or are they still engaging in paper pencils?
They have both. Most of the programs out there, just all of them have that digital component because there's that shift. But because in our classrooms we don't have a number of devices in it, so we tend to do the paper and pencil for some of the practice. What's nice, so you could assign something, or if you rotated, if you had a couple devices and you could rotate students through in stations, then you could have a technology station. They could do some of the practice and give feedback, or sometimes people might do it, you know, for homework as well. So there are different options with that.
And is the app, I know they have an app available, is that an additional charge above the program, or is that in the
Everything
program?
comes with it, yeah.
Okay.
Which is really nice.
How does this affect IXL? Like, will we still continue to use IXL, or
I think right now, because we've been using IXL, we know that alignment, we would continue right now, and then we'd have to assess if this is providing, you know, everything that IXL is providing. If it's overlap, then it wouldn't make sense to have both. But I think in the transition, it would make sense to continue it, so we know that we have that extra practice. But it's very possible, and we've seen that in other areas where we don't need to necessarily continue things because there's too much overlap.
and the professional development, is that included in that quote, or is that something?
That's a great question. The way it generally works, so you spend a certain amount, you get some days, and then we go back and we negotiate. I have Mr. Byer, we work his magic in negotiations with them to see what else we can get, but some is included, but not all.
Okay, and is there resources out there for professional development for this program? Like, do you feel like you're able to secure that since you do the planning?
Right, so they have a whole professional development, like, you know, wing of their organization.
Okay, so it'd be through this company?
Yes, so
Gotcha.
typically, you know, there'll be a session where they just do an overview of how you use the program. Another one will be on the technology piece. Another one will be on the, you know, working through a lesson and mathematical instructional piece. And that's what those three, at least we found with Wonders, is what we needed to get up and running with Wonders. And then we supplement with other types of PD providers on, specific to standards or instruction. But we can use them as well. So they offer beyond, like into even the content areas. But usually you do it upfront, so our thinking was to start in May, see if there's maybe something we can offer at some point in the summer, and then to the beginning of the year, and then into November.
Any other questions? Thank you, Maureen, that was really thorough.
Thanks, sorry.
No, I mean that as a compliment, that was, thank you
you.
to all the teachers that put in all that time and administrators, because that was very thorough.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're moving right along. Do we need to take a vote right now? Is that what you're saying? Okay. So, no further discussion? Motion?
Yep. I make a motion to accept approval of the Go Math program by Houghton from Harcourt.
For a second. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so it passes. Okay, correspondences.
Okay, you have a few things in your packet. First off, you should have the brochure from MASC for their annual Day on the Hill event. Just as a gentle reminder, it's coming up on April 26th. So I know some of you have indicated you're interested in attending. If you are, just let Lauren know ASAP, that would be great. Secondly, you should see letters to all four of our legislative representatives, Senators Moore and Fatman, and Representatives Fernandez and Meridian, regarding the vote that was taken on the 14th regarding the Foundation Budget Review Commission resolution, just as an FYI. And then last but not least, if you've been following what's been happening, what happened last Thursday, Senate 2203, known as the RISE Act, which is, I would consider to be a forced acronym, which is for an act enhancing reform, innovation, and success in education. It was, I sent to both Senators Moore and Fatman a letter endorsing or asking for their support for the RISE Act. I also put a background sheet. This is something that's very much happening, and there will be a House version that'll be taken up in the next week or two. But essentially, it's an act that would partially lift the cap on charter schools, but hand in hand would have a lot more accountability measures for the charter schools, but also significantly would look to phase in the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission over the next 7 years. So it's kind of a win-win. So as I noted on Thursday, it did pass the Senate 22-13, and we shall see what happens with the House.
Okay. Any other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours of the posted meeting?
Just as to kind of dovetail on that, I know Phil DeSutter had the opportunity to discuss our budget with the Upton Selectmen, I believe it was last Thursday night. Or no, I'm sorry, last Tuesday night. They did indicate that within the next week or two, they will be bringing forward the same resolution on the Foundation Budget Review Commission.
Okay, so other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours of the posted meeting. And for future agenda items, for future meetings, we have discussion of school start times, on April 25th, and approval of the MERS-D technology plan on May 9th. So I think that kind of wraps us up for tonight. So if I could make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we are adjourned at 8:26.